What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Liam Picks Fights Live. And guys, we're coming right up on the brink of this event. Calvin Kattar is taking on Arnold Allen in the main event of UFC Vegas 63. And frankly, we need to get right to the point today. So the reason that I'm here a little bit late was celebrating a birthday for a wedding for one of my oldest friends last night. Was out a little bit late, but I do have some bets for today. I did do my due diligence on these. So the place that I locked in today, Max Payne Griffin in the co-main event here. Guys, I was at UFC Columbus for his last fight, and Max Payne Griffin, I thought he deserved that decision against Neil Magny. I did have a play on him as a big underdog in that spot, and he actually said in interviews this week that the UFC paid him out on his contract and gave him his win bonus for his last fight. So the UFC basically felt like he should have won that fight against Neil Magny as well. They paid him accordingly. He rocked Neil Magny badly in that fight. And Neil's a very durable guy. You notice the guys that tend to finish Neil Magny in the UFC don't tend to be big hitters, save for Santiago Ponzinibbio. But I'm talking about most finishes in the UFC are submissions. When you're talking about Neil Magny, he got submitted by Shavkat Rakhmonov. He was nearly taken out via TKO against Max Payne Griffin. Griffin couldn't quite hold on in that third round, spent himself a little bit early looking for that finish. And we know that Neil Magny's a cardio machine, so he was able to keep up the pace there. But in this spot, the detriment for Tim Means has been that cardio, that pace. He was actually out grappling Kevin Holland a little bit at the beginning of that fight. I think people will forget he was able to get some takedowns as well. And we didn't really see that, heart, the drive, the finish in that fight. He kind of slowed down. He wasn't able to keep that consistent pace. And when Kevin kept getting up, it kind of broke Tim's spirit. Then he started to get outgrappled, outmaneuvered by Kevin Holland, who is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt to his credit. But I think in this fight, Max Payne Griffin to me looked like he was a guy who was right on the fringe of, breaking into that contendership role. Yes, he's a little bit older, but he looked to be in the best form of his career. I think the opposite is true for Tim Means. I felt like that Kevin Holland fight, I had 5 units on Kevin Holland inside the distance. I really felt confident that he was going to go out there and get the finish. And I don't have the same kind of investment in somebody in Max Payne Griffin, that could be in a potential letdown spot coming off that contendership kind of fight against Neil Magny. Didn't quite get over the hump. But I feel like based on the UFC paying him and giving him a matchup that they feel like he could win, maybe get that finish, maybe get some momentum going once again in the division, I feel like this is a bounce back spot for Max Payne Griffin. I like that it's in a co-main event feature here. I think it's going to be good action. I think these guys are going to come out swinging, but I think that Max Payne Griffin, by submission at over 10-1 is very interesting against a guy who's 5-6 career to the submission. His last 2 losses in the UFC were via submission. And Tim Means is a good grappler, but when you're tired, it doesn't matter how good you are at grappling. You get submitted sometimes. Adolfo Vieira against Anthony Fluffy Hernandez, perfect example of that. So plus 1,300 is what I ended up taking on the sub prop there. And I just felt like that was a valuable look in terms of, when you're looking at a guy 6 career losses and 2 in his most recent fights, why is it over 10-1? And it's because most people think of Max Payne Griffin as a guy with no subs in the UFC. Absolutely. But this is his perfect opportunity to get his first sub. So I like it at plus 1,300. I took a shot on him inside the distance here. I feel like he could win the fight by knockout as well. He does have that big power. Like I mentioned, he rocked Neil Magny. So that was really my favorite play of the card. I got some early numbers on Carlos Mota, but I did play it as well at minus 175, at minus 160. I felt like this is a good matchup for Carlos Mota to come into the UFC. Cody Durden has been investing in his career. He's been training, I believe, an American Top Team, looked a lot better in some of his recent fights, but one persistent issue has seemed to be, his cardio in that third round. I think that, so some people just have a capped capacity. They can't really break through that cardio barrier. Potentially, this is a spot, another opportunity for him to, show that progression in his career, but I haven't really seen that. And Carlos Mota, in the fight that he ended up slowing down and getting finished against Charles Johnson, it was into those championship rounds. We're not going to see that here. It's going to be a 15-minute fight. I thought that in his last fight, he showed the best form of his career, got a brilliant knockout there. Kid's got a lot of power in his hands. I think that he also could find takedowns here, get on top. I think that he could be a potentially marketable guy. He's coming into this fight with a similar social media following to Cody Durden, and this guy's not even in the UFC yet. He's just an LFA champion. And I think that, the UFC is going to look to push him up the ranks if Carlos is able to go out there and get a big win in this spot. So I took some of those early numbers. I continued to add at the later prices. That's what I ended up tracking as well. But I like Carlos Mota here. And one interesting angle was I took Carlos Mota, finished no scorecards. Cody Durden does have some power in this division, but, you're not seeing a tremendous amount of finishes out of him. Had to grit out a couple of these decisions, was tending to slow down. I think that there's a chance that Mota could finish this fight late. So I took his prop as well, the scorecards no action at -180, because I felt like it could have been -230 or a little bit higher in this spot. 70% sounds good to me. I don't think that Cody Durden is likely to go out there and submit Mota either. So those are the reasons that I felt pretty bullish on that side of the equation. Now, for the main event of the evening, boy, this is a really tricky fight. At first, I was thinking to myself, this has got to be a Calvin Kattar spot. He's got a lot of experience. He's had 5 UFC main events at this stage. He's fought a lot of the best guys in the division. He's looked good in all those fights. He's never really gotten blown out of the water. But then I did my due diligence and dug back into the tape of Arnold Allen, and he's a very talented fighter, guys, plain and simple. The Mads Burnell fight, to me, answered some of the questions that I had about what happens if this guy's in a gritty fight, a fight that gets tough for him, fight where he's in a lot of positions he doesn't want to be. And he was taken down on a number of occasions in that fight. Mads Burnell pushed, a pretty tremendous pace on him as well. When he would get up against the fence, he'd take him back down, he'd kick out his feet, and he was really trying to apply that heavy, steady grappling pressure. And in the end, it was Arnold Allen who was able to break him first in those grappling exchanges. He forced a bad shot out of him. He was going for an extended takedown against the fence, really trying to mitigate, trying to hold on, trying to, grit out that third round. And then he ended up getting submitted in that spot. It was a really impressive win by Arnold Allen. And if you guys, fancy a guillotine like I do, boy, that's a really good one to go back and rewatch. The way he got that grip, he set it up. And he really had a devastating finish there. He was able to finish on top from the top side control. So really brutal choke there from Arnold Allen. I think that that's the kind of, submission skills that could ward off some potential takedown attempts here from a Calvin Kattar, who, he showed in the Giga Chikadze fight. He could mix it up. He could bring out some other skills and make people think about his clinch game, his takedowns, his inside work, his elbows. And I think all that's on the table here. But, just looking at some laws of big numbers, you start looking at the fact that Arnold Allen is a much younger guy here. Arnold Allen has not been knocked out in his career. Calvin Kattar has not been knocked out. One of those trends is going to break, but the guy who's a little bit older, who's absorbed so many significant strikes over the course of these recent bouts, over 100 significant strikes absorbed, and I believe 4 out of 4 recent bouts. Even the Giga Chikadze, dog walking, he absorbed 100 significant strikes, right? So Calvin's there to be hit, and that's going to work, against some guys, but Arnold Allen does appear to have real power. He was staggering a lot of guys on the tape with his shots. I think that it's very possible he could get hurt here. He did get dropped to a knee on a number of occasions in the tape as well, Arnold Allen. But, that's really it. He basically gets dropped to a knee, pops back up, and keeps fighting. And I like the grit and determination I saw because, man, that Mads Burnell fight looked like it was trending in one direction. But I think he's got a very good connection with head trainer Firas Zahabi. I think that when Firas is telling him what to do, I think he zones in on it. He finds his chances, and I think he's a very opportunistic guy. So I think there are chances for him to steal rounds with a pack day. Like, I think he could steal a round by dropping Calvin Kattar. I think he could steal a round with a big strike that cuts him open, and leads to some big damage. There's a lot of scar tissue on the face of Calvin Kattar. But I don't think that either man is going to have a pushover here. So I think that the original line of -175 was too aggressive on the Calvin Kattar side. I think that there's a reason that was bet down. I think there's a reason why market-wide it's now a 50-50 type of pick 'em fight. I think both these guys bring a lot, have a lot to offer in this fight. but I do think that the market has been saying some interesting things as well. You know, it seems to me like everybody on Twitter is rocking with our guy Calvin Kattar this weekend, and I can't blame him, right? You're getting the UFC experienced guy. Some people got him at plus money. You know, I'm going to look at the board right now from our friends at Oddsjam and see what we're doing on this market. But I think that overall, these are, hey, Uncle Weezy in the house. Appreciate you. Sharpest chat in the game each and every time. Appreciate you guys always. If you guys have a bet that you're in love with, if you guys have a fight that you really want me to break down, we got 8 minutes left. I'm going to be hopping on with the guys at Pub Sports Radio as I do each and every week here at around 4 p.m. When the card's getting started. So just wanted to break down my betting action for all the people that subscribe here on YouTube. I appreciate each and every one of you guys. And any questions you guys have, please get them off your chest. But I will just look to the card and see if there's any other action that I have. I did take a small position here, and I'm gonna have to track this real quick on Trishan Gore inside the distance. I don't feel great about it, but I'll tell you why I took it. Trishan Gore, I believe he's been favored in both of his previous UFC bouts. I think people are forgetting how dangerous he looked in that fight against Brian Battle in terms of the damage he did when he did land. You know, Brian really got hurt in that fight. And his eye was pretty swollen up. So, you know, I feel like Brian put a pace on him. He did a great job. You know, he clearly won the fight, but it told me that Trishan Gore, you know, had some talent. He had some potential. He was very athletic. And despite being green, you know, he gave Brian Battle a run there. Now, we've seen Brian go on to have some success down a weight class. I think that we got some great questions in the house. So I'll just say really quick, my thoughts here, which was that, you know, this is the kind of fight. I don't know. I'm looking violence, if anything. But here, let's answer some questions. We got my man Brisbane 77 in the chat. Christian Rodriguez by sub plus 550. I don't hate it. I think Weems is a talented grappler. You know, I do think the most likely finish here is a knockout. I think Christian Rodriguez is a talented grappler. I don't think he's very likely to get submitted with that belly down armbar series that Joshua Weems is very talented with. I think Josh plays a little bit too much off his back. I think that has been, you know, not exploited to this point by his opponents, but I think somebody with a competent submission grappling game of their own, like Christian Rodriguez, could be able to take advantage of that. But I didn't love the money line just because of that slight, you know, danger factor. But truthfully, I think Weems is very likely to get finished in this spot. So yeah, anybody who's on the Rodriguez finish props, I don't hate it. I think that's a good way to try and buy down in this fight because I do expect him to finish here. Weems has been finished, you know, several times in his career by knockout in the first round, I believe, as a pro and an amateur, if my memory serves. And some other questions in the chat. We've got Vandera and this fight. I mean, guys, to be truthful with you, that just stood out to me like a pass fight from the beginning. You know, I understand why people are on Vandera, but it's a heavyweight fight. They're both not very good. I think that Waldo probably projects higher overall. I just think that Jared Vandera's lack of thoughtfulness in his fights will continue to cost him. You know, he really just doesn't fight optimally ever. And I think that he could win the fight, but do I really want to bet another guy that's not going to fight even how he should to win? You know, he's not going to give the best game plan. He's not going to attempt the things that you'd want to see him do to win the fight more often than not. Maybe he makes an improvement here. He does have UFC experience, but it's like, I haven't seen a guy that's getting much better each time. I do think, you know, there is that narrative bet on him to win by sub because Alexei Olenek taught him how to do that front choke series. So take that for whatever it's worth. Maybe he gets the submission going here, the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. But the way he took the back against Alexei Olenek told me that there was not a lot of brain thinking that was going on in that fight. Somebody's asking about Roman Dolidze versus Phil Hawes. You know, I feel like that meme where it's like, don't push this button is me and Roman Dolidze today, because I've cashed on him a couple times now, betting him in the UFC. And I've always wanted to fade Phil Hawes. I think I bet Duran win against this guy last time. You know, like, I just think that there are some problems with how Phil has fought in the past that will cost him. I think his willingness to get hit and trade sometimes is going to be his downfall. He's very confident, but I do think that the way that Roman has slowed down in the past, the way he's lacked volume in the past has been a little bit scary to me in terms of, is he going to be able to push the pace necessary to win this fight? But I think he's going to have interesting leverage here. He's a pretty tall guy. He's long. He's awkward. He's got those big knees that he was bringing up to the head of Kyle Dawkins pretty efficiently. He's also pretty tall middleweight to his credit. So I think that Roman Dolidze, I would not be surprised if he stunned him in this fight and then latched onto a choke. So I did consider the Dolidze sub. I'm not kidding. I haven't bet it yet, but that was what I was leaning towards. So there is my thoughts on the fight card, guys. Mota versus Durden, Mota late finish. That's basically how I feel, Fila. I'm thinking Mota might get it done via TKO in round 3. That would be my favorite, look there. If I was going to sprinkle a couple bucks on a round, I would think Mota KO 2 or 3 would be my look. But guys, thank you all so much for being here. I wish you all the very best of luck. Those are the fights that I'm targeting today. God bless you all. Enjoy those fights. And until next time, coming back at our normal time with a power panel next week. So until then, guys, enjoy. Take care and good luck on all your bets. We'll see you next time.